Welcome back, you guys. Today we're going to examine the most intense tank combat footage from around the world, including Ukraine, Syria, and Iraq. To better understand the type of tactics being used, we also created animated maps and 3D rendered recreations of the engagements. Welcome to my Instagram feed. I see 4 of these videos before noon every day. The first engagement is a wild bird's eye view of a Ukrainian tank facing off against a Russian T-72B3 and 3 enemy anti-tank guided missile teams targeting that Ukrainian tank. The Russian tank pushes forward along the Ukrainian trench line when it hits an anti-tank landmine that explodes right underneath it. It was a mobility kill. The T-72 is unable to move. Its track has been destroyed. That's very bad for the tank's health when that happens. The TM-62 is the most common anti-tank mine. It uses a brute force explosion, often not enough to penetrate the armor, but it has no problem blowing the tracks off, which explains why the Russian tank crew inside survived the hit. In between them is a fortified trench line that loops all the way around. This is where a squad of Ukrainian soldiers have taken cover from the armored tank duel. We see a Ukrainian infantryman pop out of a trench here on the left of the screen, just about 25 meters away from the tank, and they brave it. They fire an RPG shot at the disabled tank, going for the final finish him style kill. Before we get into the crazy ending of this tank footage, this video is sponsored by Pepperbox, a streaming service built by creators for our community. If you like my channel, you're gonna love Pepperbox because I can release my exclusive show, Cappy's Combat Review, over there. It's a series that I've always wanted to do but could never do on YouTube because it shows war fully uncensored and unsanitized, but I think it's important for anyone interested in these topics to see. I create the series weekly. It's like today's episode, but I can say shit and I can show this. I've already made 14 exclusive episodes that you can watch on there. I'm extremely proud of the series. Pepperbox has an outstanding community, so I've collaborated with The Fat Electrician, Angry Cops, Justin Taylor, just to name a few. There's no brand integrations, no ads, early video access. It's basically like Netflix for YouTubers, but without all the BS. Pepperbox membership also gives you access to hundreds of other exclusive episodes, including habitual Line Crosser's hilarious show, State of Mind, Brandon Herrera, Donut Operator, and many more. Go to pepperbox.tv/joincappyarmy. All memberships start with a 14-day free trial and are $7.99 a month after that. Back to the episode. But the RPG is fired wide and misses the tank completely. It explodes to the right in the field about 100-150 meters away. The adrenaline in a moment like this for a soldier who's firing like that is a major factor. That and not wanting to jump out of cover of a trench for too long can make it very difficult to get a steady aim. The Russian tanker exits his vehicle, briefly checks the status of the tank, not aware that he's still under fire from very close range, and it appears like he takes off his kit and he's able to escape right off camera to the right unharmed. It's unclear if he was the only one in the tank, but it seems likely. In the background, 20 meters behind the Russian tank, we can see Ukrainian soldiers moving through the trench line, trying to get an angle on the Russian tank, but they don't see that the crew has escaped. This is when the Ukrainian tank opens fire. The round impacts the disabled, empty Russian tank, and you can see bits of it ricocheting and hitting all around. It appears to have been an anti-tank round instead of a high explosive one, because we can see the munition exited straight through the Russian tank, went straight through and impacted about 100 meters to the right off screen there. We actually just see the smoke hit kick up. A T-72 fires a 125mm APF SDS round, which is essentially a high-velocity dart moving at 1,700 meters per second. That thing is flying fast. The Sabo peels off mid-flight, and the tungsten or DU penetrator hits the enemy tank. When it pierces the armor, it sends spalling fragments from the armor everywhere. It's partly meant to either shred the crew inside or disable the tank. It's capable of going through around 700mm of armor depending on conditions. In this case, it impacts the weaker side of the Russian armor, just below the turret, which is likely around 50mm of protection because it's pretty weak there, but it could be upwards of 120mm. We zoom out and see the Ukrainian tank is in a bold move near the trench line. It's extremely rare and unusual to see armored units moving this close to a trench even when this footage was recorded in May of 2023. The first thing that stands out to me is this is an intersection with 3 high-speed avenues of approach, which makes it a very dangerous kill zone. The positioning of those Russian anti-tank teams is perfect for an ambush. The Ukrainian tank then at this point begins to take heavy fire from 3 separate Russian ATGM teams. These are anti-tank guided missiles. 3 smoke clouds kick up where incoming missiles miss their targets. The Ukrainian tank scores a direct ammo hit on that shot, and the enemy tank's rounds begin to cook off inside, sending a giant flame jet up into the air. They're able to fire at about 6 to 8 rounds per minute with their autoloader. Then the first of the 3 Russian anti-tank guided missile teams fires their Kornet missile at the Ukrainian tank. The first round misses. That missile impacts the ground about 50 meters short. A piece of missile actually bounces in front of the tank, as you can see there, which is crazy. The second Russian ATGM team fires a missile strike and it hits the tree stump, and we see that activates the jet stream of its shape charge. The warhead is then detonated and it fires a high velocity metal copper jet, which we actually get to see here in real time. That copper jet, that smoke cloud that's pluming forward, is moving extremely fast at about 7 kilometers per second. Watch what happens here. It's absolutely crazy. Extremely close call with that anti-tank guided missile, just barely misses the Ukrainian tank by a few feet and then hits the ground next to it. Then the drone tries to fix the location of where those Russian ATGM teams are. The next battle just happened last week in the town of Seversk, where Russia's offensive has so far been stalled. It shows even in the world of drones, tank-on-tank violence still happens. You can see the Ukrainian tank on the bottom left and the Russian tank on the top left of the screen. The Ukrainian tank spots the Russian turtle tank and chases after them. They're getting intelligence from the drone that's watching them overhead. This battle shows us there are pros and cons to having overhead drone protection like this shed tank that Russia's using. The cons are that it has limited visibility and limited turret mobility. The Russian tank cannon is stuck in one position facing forward with maybe 40 degrees of visibility directly in front of them. Take a look at this battle geolocated to the exact field in Seversk that this happened in. It's tough to tell from the drone footage, but the terrain between these two tanks is a forest patch that the Russian tank cannot see over. The Ukrainian tank takes one shot, which explodes with a giant display of sparks on the turtle tank. The Russian tank begins to reverse, with a huge plume of smoke coming out of it. The munition that the Ukrainian tank fired is a heat round, meaning high explosive anti-tank munition. Just based on the fireball and sparks on impact, that's what suggests that this is heat. Unlike Sabo rounds, they deliver a shape charge with that focused explosive energy. What you're looking at here traveling at the enemy tank is the 3BK-18M, which is one of the types of heat rounds fired by the T-64. Upon impact with the enemy, a nose fuse triggers, and then the explosive charge with that penetrative jet of high explosive molten metal just shoots straight into the tank, killing the crew, creating spalling everywhere. It also just destroys a bunch of the interior of the tank and can set off munitions. Generally speaking, the pros of this type of tank ammo versus your APF SDS is that the heat is effective at any range, so its penetration doesn't degrade over distance because it's not relying on kinetic energy. It also has a multi-role purpose, so gunners can use it against soft targets, which is my favorite euphemism for humans. Sometimes I call my friends, I'm like, hey, you soft targets want to come over tonight? If I had friends. Or fortified positions and helicopters. But it's more easily defeated by explosive reactive armor and composite armor. It's got less penetration at around 600 millimeters versus that Sabo. From later battle damage assessments, the Russian tank here was finished off by a Ukrainian drone afterwards. But according to the YouTube channel Such Omosis, which where I found this footage at originally, this was the first ever recorded instance of a Ukrainian tank destroying a turtle tank because tank-on-tank violence is so rare nowadays. And then in the next engagement comes from the point of view of an onboard camera attached to a Ukrainian tank from the 25th Brigade that were fighting in the tree lines of the Kherson region. The date isn't known, but appears to be from the 2022, most likely from when they were initially retaking the city of Kherson. The commander of the tank is looking around trying to spot targets of opportunity. Visibility in this region is relatively good, so they fire 6 shots at a tree line that could be a couple of clicks away, and we see their autoloader in action. Ideal engagement range, given limitation of some optics, is about 1500 meters, but they can push out further than that, although this engagement we're going to see gets much closer than that. Here is where it gets insane though. A Russian column of vehicles starts heading straight toward them. It's like a mad dash, crazy sprint forward. The gunner opens up with the Dishka, which is like a 50 caliber machine gun, and the tank starts backing up in reverse. Typically, the reverse speed on T-72 tanks is relatively slow at about 4 kilometers per hour, but that's not always the case. It's unclear why they don't open up with their main tank gun, but it seems like they might be out of ammunition or the system is down and broken, we're not sure. So the Russian column of artillery, Ural supplied trucks, and infantry is headed straight at the Ukrainian tank at this point at point blank range. This shows the fog of war at its finest, I think. Complete chaos and confusion of where the front lines are, where friendly forces are. Also, when both sides use the same type of equipment like this type of thing is bound to happen. The first truck is able to run the gauntlet. That Russian truck, it makes it past the Ukrainian tank. The second Russian supply truck, dragging some towed artillery it looks like, also tries to drive past. Then an incoming round appears to hit the Dishka machine gun and ammo starts to cook off, exploding everywhere. Or it might have just been a round cooking off from overheating from sustained fire. Either way, the gunner starts reloading the ammo right away, and we get this really awkward moment served up to us where the tank gunner makes this awkward eye contact with the Russian supply driver as it moves by just 10 feet away. What happens next in quick succession is wild. An artillery round hits 50 meters in front of them, unsure if it's friendly or enemy. Then a Russian MLTB, which is like a tracked vehicle, also tries to pass right in front of the tank of the Ukrainians and has some infantry riding on top, so they're actually taking shots with their AKs. To the right, directly in front of the tank, you can see Ukrainian infantry firing rounds at those Russians. Then an incoming round hits the top of the Dishka machine gun, and you can see in slow motion the gun gets rattled and the gunner takes cover inside the tank. That footage really shows how unpredictable war can be sometimes. Your main gun goes down, your second gun goes down, you have no idea who is who, it's just wild. And the next engagement is some high-definition drone footage of a tank duel. Here, 2 Ukrainian tanks are laying in wait behind the tree line for the 3 Russian tanks to show themselves. They have communication with the drones that's overhead, which is giving them a full picture of the battlefield. And the first thing that stands out to me is that today, all these tanks would be droned pretty hard straight to the face by now. The tank takes 3 quick shots, knocks out 2 of the Russian tanks while one of the Russian tanks escapes. This next battle is footage that was posted on United 24 Media's channel originally. It shows a column of Russian armor moving down in on an assault. It's made up of 3 tanks for the firepower and 4 armored personnel carriers that bring the infantry. The old tactic back then a few years ago was for the Russians to regroup in a village before they would launch their attack. So we see here the Russian tank with the arrow next to it is being currently targeted. A Ukrainian armed with a Western Javelin missile launcher fires from about 2 kilometers away, and then the missile travels there. And boom, the top-down explosion in the background is that tank getting knocked out. There's a lot to be learned from this next firefight though. It's actually a Russian assault with over 100 armored vehicles, maybe one of the largest armored mechanized assaults ever caught on camera. It starts with 20 Russian armored vehicles preparing for the push. They storm forward trying to get to the zero line, and their goal is to destroy the Ukrainian trenches. But the problem is there's only a few avenues of approach for them, which creates these choke points. And we can see here is where they're staged, and here are the 4 different avenues of approach that they're going to take to the front. But Ukrainian forces have already sighted them in ahead of time with artillery and javelins. This is before drones became prevalent. One of the cluster bombs hits directly on a Russian tank, and more of the roads are blocked off by more and more destroyed vehicles. What follows is footage that I think reveals a ton about armored combat and how it's changed to nowadays, because this has become so rare and has been entirely replaced by infantry assaults this year. It's an absolute slugfest. We can see there are rows upon rows of Russian tanks getting taken out by HIMARS attacks, artillery. The Russian tanks push forward, get knocked out, and it causes a whole column to get stopped dead in its tracks. Russian tanks with mine clearing equipment push up to try to avoid those mines, and they try to clear a path, and we could see a Congo line of other armored vehicles attempting to push forward and getting stuck. This same exact thing happened to the Ukrainian Bradleys when they tried assaulting well-prepared defended position as well. It's just not possible in today's day of drones and precision artillery and missiles. The next engagement comes to us from Syria during the 2024 2024 retreat and the end of Assad's forces. We're looking at rebel drone cam footage here. We see the trucks highlighted in green are the Syrian rebels chasing Assad's troops. The guys highlighted in red on the right side of the screen are fleeing forces. A platoon of rebels with a BMP-1 T-72s has them in full route, just chasing after them, and a machine gunner in the back of one of the pickup trucks opens fire on an enemy truck that got lost and stuck behind them and got separated from the unit when they were being overrun. The truck tries to pass on the fast lane, but just absolutely eats and crashes it. I can't show you the next bit of what happens here, so we're going to animate it on a map, but basically that rebel BMP tracked vehicle just runs over the enemy truck and crushes it into a tiny little can. Is crazy, Roger. It's like my old squad leader used to always say, stay the away from tanks. Then another vehicle tries to catch up and break out of the encirclement, but they lose control and they crash on the side of the road. The next engagement stays in Syria, and it might actually be, no exaggeration, I shit you not, the most weird tank footage I've ever seen. The National Front for Liberation got into a bizarre chase with an enemy tank in Syria in Idlib Narab in February of 2020. The armored personnel carrier here on the bottom right looks like it sees where the enemy T-72 tank is and tries to go around it by driving through the trees, but the main battle tank tries to chase it around. The APC makes a crazy, desperate decision and rams the tank. It's more maneuverable and faster, that APC, but has no effective weapons after it. They dance with one another for a while, and the tank can't get its turret barrel on target because it's too close. The APC then breaks contact and successfully escapes. Absolutely was that, which is just, I think, our perfect segue into our next segment of why do tanks always run things over? Here's an American Bradley IFV running a car over in Iraq. Here's an Abrams running a vehicle over like it's a smash derby. And another Abrams running over a vehicle not realizing there's an IED in it and it exploding. Fortunately, no one died there or was hurt, and here they run over what they believe is an insurgent vehicle after they got done popping shots into it with their pistols.
Later, the car's owner told us, I'm a taxi driver. The car was my livelihood.
Oh, that's depressing. This next engagement comes from Syria and shows that sometimes it's simply the tank who sees the enemy tank first that wins a duel. The Syrian government T-72 travels down the road and sees the rebel T-62 further away in the shot. The tank prepares to fire quickly. It just so happened the Syrian tank was looking in the right direction, right at the enemy. Considering the fact that it's being recorded though, it's likely that the Syrian tank had better intelligence and knew the location of the rebel tank ahead of time and knew what they were walking into. Having good intelligence makes all the difference. The Syrian tank scores a direct hit against the other tank and just knocks it out of commission. But it's not always about who peekaboos who first, as this next battle shows us. A Ukrainian tank gets ordered to hunt down a Russian tank in the fields. A Ukrainian drone gets eyes on the Russian tank hiding in a tree line, trying to lay an ambush covertly. The Russians see their target first, they fire a shell, but they miss because their target's on the move. They fire again. The Ukrainian tank then gets a read on where the incoming fire point of origin is from, and the Ukrainian tank makes a shot while still on the move. Most modern tanks have 2-axis stabilization for their turret guns, so it's still pretty incredible shot though. We see in slow motion as the shell slams into the Russian armor and detonates its ammo because its ammo is just vulnerable inside there. This next engagement from Ukraine is a pretty textbook example of why tanks can be useful in an assault when it's available. Ukrainian forces are assaulting a trench that's built along a tree line here with 3 T-Series tanks on the Ukrainian side and several armored personnel trucks filled with infantry. On the other side of the tree line is a Russian tank that's defending that appears to have decided that it wouldn't be in the best situation to engage, so the Russian tank retreats. Looking at the map, we can see better how all of this is laid out. The Ukrainian 3 tanks use their cannons as a kind of shock tactic to keep the enemies in the trench suppressed while while infantry then press in. The infantry push up with the cover of the heavy weapons. They dismount from their vehicles and successfully take over the trench. It's interesting to note that this is from earlier in the war, and this kind of assault would currently be likely impossible because drones would just take all that armor out quickly in the open like that. I just wanted to say I saw all of your comments on the last video. I see you guys out there, and I do agree with some of the criticisms. I still stand on business about what I said, but I don't think I put enough weight and consideration into speaking about some of Russia's strategy or their attrition warfare style and what they're trying to do with trying to collapse the Ukrainian front line. And so I agree with some of the constructive feedback and criticism, and I'm working on an update, a new episode that's going to be coming out soon, because my intention is never to be misleading or inaccurate with my videos. If you want to check out a video I did about my personal story of mine about an Apache airstrike that I was involved in on my tour in Iraq, you can click the link here, or it's in the description as well of the video. I'm your average infantryman, Cappy, ending transmission.